Emma's eyes fluttered open as the sound of rain tapped gently against her bedroom window. The soft rhythm of the drops was usually comforting, but not today. A throbbing pain pulsed in her head. Her throat felt dry and scratchy, and every muscle in her body seemed to ache. She reached for her phone to check the time. It was 7:30 a.m., but she felt like she hadn't slept at all. Dragging herself out of bed, Emma shuffled to the bathroom. She splashed cold water on her face, hoping it might help her feel more awake. Looking into the mirror, she noticed her pale complexion and slightly bloodshot eyes. "This isn't good," she muttered to herself. She went to the kitchen and opened the cupboard, searching for some kind of relief. Tea might help, she thought, grabbing a box of herbal tea. While the kettle boiled, Emma rubbed her temples and tried to think clearly. The tea was soothing, but the scratch in her throat persisted, and the headache only grew worse. Emma debated whether she could handle the day on her own. Maybe some rest would be enough? She lay back down on the couch with a blanket, trying to sleep. But her mind kept returning to the same thought. What if this gets worse? What if I need to see someone? Finally, she sat up and reached for her phone again. Opening her search app, she typed, "Doctor near me." A small clinic just a few blocks away appeared at the top of the list. It seemed convenient, but a knot tightened in her stomach. How am I supposed to explain everything in English? She wondered. Emma had been learning English for a while, but real-life conversations, especially about health, felt daunting. Yet, as another wave of dizziness swept over her, she knew she had no choice. After taking a deep breath, she changed into some comfortable clothes, grabbed her bag, and stepped out into the rainy morning. The cool air brushed against her skin, and she felt a flicker of relief, but her anxiety lingered. As she walked toward the clinic, Emma rehearsed sentences in her mind. "I feel sick. I have a headache. My throat hurts," she whispered under her breath. With each step closer to the clinic, Emma hoped she was prepared for what lay ahead. Emma's sneakers squeaked against the clinic's polished floor as she stepped inside, shaking off droplets of rain from her umbrella. The clinic was small but welcoming, with warm lighting, cream-colored walls, and soft chairs neatly arranged in the waiting area. A faint smell of disinfectant lingered in the air, blending with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee from the reception desk. She hesitated for a moment, looking around. Behind the desk, a cheerful receptionist with curly hair and a name tag that read Linda smiled warmly at her. Emma's heart raced as she approached. "Good morning. How can I help you?" Linda asked in a friendly tone. Emma paused, her rehearsed phrases echoing in her mind. I feel sick," she said cautiously, her voice raspier than usual. "I need to see a doctor." Linda nodded, her smile unwavering. "Of course. Can you please fill out this form?" She handed Emma a clipboard with a single sheet of paper. Emma glanced at it, relieved to see that most of the questions were straightforward. Name, age, symptoms, emergency contact. Sitting down in one of the chairs, she started filling it out, but her hand trembled slightly as she wrote. When she reached the symptoms section, she hesitated. She scribbled headache and sore throat, then paused, unsure of how to describe the exhaustion. After a moment of thought, she wrote tired. She returned the clipboard to Linda, who gave it a quick glance. "Thank you, Emma. Please take a seat, and the doctor will call you soon." Emma nodded, muttering a quiet thanks before finding a corner chair. She sat down and looked around, trying to distract herself. A mother was calming her restless toddler a few seats away, and an elderly man read a newspaper nearby. Emma pulled out her phone and opened her language app, scrolling through phrases about health. "Do you have a fever?" she whispered softly to herself, practicing. "No, I don't." "Yes, I do." She repeated them silently, trying to keep her nerves at bay. Minutes felt like hours as she waited. Each time the door to the consultation rooms opened, her stomach tightened. Finally, a nurse in light blue scrubs stepped into the waiting area and called out, "Emma." Startled, Emma quickly stood up. The nurse smiled and gestured for her to follow. Taking a deep breath, Emma clutched her bag and walked toward the consultation room, her anxiety mingling with a glimmer of determination. The door to the consultation room closed with a soft click, and Emma found herself standing in a small but tidy space. A desk cluttered with medical files and a computer sat to one side, while a patient's chair and examination table occupied the other. Behind the desk stood Dr. Harris, a kind-looking man with silver-rimmed glasses and a reassuring smile. "Good morning, Emma," he said warmly. "Please, have a seat." Emma sat down, clutching her bag tightly on her lap. Her nerves made her throat feel even drier, but she managed a polite "good morning." Dr. Harris leaned forward slightly. "So, what seems to be the problem today?" Emma took a deep breath, recalling the phrases she had practiced. I have a headache and a sore throat," she began, her voice hesitant but clear. "Also, I feel very tired." Dr. Harris nodded, typing into the computer as he listened. "I see. Have you had a fever?" Emma shook her head. "I don't think so." "Any coughing?" "Yes, a little," she replied, her voice cracking slightly. Dr. Harris glanced up and smiled. "Okay, let me check a few things." He stood and reached for a thermometer. "This will just take a moment." Emma opened her mouth as instructed, feeling slightly self-conscious as the thermometer beeped softly. Dr. Harris examined it and gave a nod. "No fever. That's a good sign," he said reassuringly. Next, he reached for a stethoscope. "Now, I'll check your breathing. Please take a deep breath for me." Emma followed his instructions, feeling the cool metal of the stethoscope against her back. The room was silent except for the sound of her breathing and the rhythmic typing of Dr. Harris's notes. "Your lungs sound clear," he said after a moment, removing the stethoscope. "Now, let me take a look at your throat." Emma complied, feeling a brief wave of discomfort as he gently examined her throat with a small flashlight. "It looks like you have a mild throat infection," Dr. Harris concluded, sitting back down at his desk. "It's nothing too serious, but it's likely causing your symptoms." Emma nodded, relief washing over her. "Okay, what should I do?" Dr. Harris began typing again. "I'll prescribe you some antibiotics for the infection and a mild painkiller for the headache. Make sure to rest and drink plenty of fluids." "Does that sound manageable?" "Yes," Emma said, feeling a bit more at ease. He turned the screen slightly toward her. "Here's the prescription. I've included the instructions for how to take each medication. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask." Emma leaned in to read the prescription. She noted the clear instructions. Take 1 pill twice a day with food. It seemed simple enough, but she still asked, "How long do I need to take the antibiotics?" "For 7 days," Dr. Harris replied. "Even if you start feeling better, it's important to finish the course." Emma nodded, grateful for his patience. "Thank you, Doctor." Dr. Harris smiled. "You're welcome. I hope you feel better soon." As Emma stood to leave, She felt a surge of relief. The hardest part describing her symptoms was over. Now, she just needed to follow the plan. Emma left the consultation room with a mixture of relief and lingering unease. Following the nurse's guidance, she entered a smaller room where the examination would continue. Dr. Harris was already waiting with a reassuring smile. "All right, Emma," he began, motioning for her to sit on the examination table. "Let's check a few more things to be sure." Emma climbed up onto the table, the crinkling of the paper beneath her adding to the room's quiet atmosphere. "First, I'll check your blood pressure," Dr. Harris said, wrapping the cuff around her arm. As the device inflated, Emma felt the slight squeeze but remained still. "Perfectly normal," he announced after a moment, jotting down the numbers. Next, he retrieved a tongue depressor. "Let's take another look at your throat," he said. "Open wide and say a." Emma complied, feeling the cold, flat wood on her tongue. Dr. Harris peered in with his flashlight. "A bit red and swollen, but nothing alarming. This confirms the mild infection we talked about." Setting the tools aside, he continued, "Now, let me check your lymph nodes." His hands pressed gently along the sides of her neck, and Emma winced slightly. "Tender?" he asked. "Yes, a little," she replied. Dr. Harris nodded thoughtfully. "It's common with throat infections. Nothing to worry about, but I'll include something in your prescription to help reduce inflammation." Emma watched as he turned back to his computer, typing swiftly. The sound of the keyboard filled the silence until he spoke again. "I'll prescribe to medications, antibiotics to fight the infection, and a mild painkiller for the headache and throat pain. You'll also need to drink plenty of fluids and rest as much as possible." Dr. Harris printed out the prescription and handed it to Emma. "Here you go. It includes all the instructions you'll need. Do you have any questions?" Emma studied the paper. She noticed detailed instructions like, "Take 1 antibiotic capsule every 12 hours and use the painkillers only when necessary." "How soon will I feel better?" she asked, her voice hopeful. "Most people feel significant improvement within 2 or 3 days, he explained. "But remember, you need to finish the full course of antibiotics even if you feel better before that." Emma nodded. "Okay. And is there anything else I should avoid?" "Not much," he replied. "Avoid cold drinks and overly spicy foods for a few days to prevent further irritation." Relief washed over her as she folded the prescription and slipped it into her bag. "Thank you so much, Doctor." Dr. Harris smiled warmly. "You're welcome, Emma. If anything changes or if you have questions, don't hesitate to call." As Emma stepped out of the room, she felt lighter, knowing that a solution was within reach. With the prescription in hand, her next task was to head to the pharmacy and get the medications she needed. The rain had eased into a light drizzle as Emma made her way to the pharmacy. The clinic receptionist had recommended a small drugstore just a block away, so Emma pulled up her hood and walked briskly, eager to get her medications and head home. The pharmacy was cozy, with neatly organized shelves displaying everything from vitamins to cold medicine. A friendly-looking pharmacist stood behind the counter, arranging bottles and paperwork. Emma hesitated for a moment, rehearsing her words silently before approaching. When she reached the counter, the pharmacist looked up with a smile. "Hello, how can I help you?" he asked. Emma pulled the prescription from her bag and handed it to him. "I need these, please," she said, her voice soft but steady. The pharmacist glanced at the prescription and nodded. "Of course. It'll just take a moment to prepare." As he moved to the back of the pharmacy, Emma looked around, taking in the signs and labels. Words like antiseptic, bandages, and pain relievers caught her eye, reinforcing some of the vocabulary she'd recently studied. After a few minutes, the pharmacist returned with a small paper bag. "Here we go," he said, placing it on the counter. "This is the antibiotic. You need to take 1 capsule every 12 hours, preferably with food. Do you understand?" Emma nodded. "Yes, every 12 hours with food. And this," he continued, holding up a smaller box, "is the painkiller. Take 1 tablet only when you feel pain, no more than 3 times a day." Emma repeated carefully, "1 tablet when I feel pain, up to 3 times a day." "Perfect," the pharmacist said, smiling. "Do you have any questions about the medications?" Emma thought for a moment before asking, "How long do I take the antibiotics?" "For 7 days," he replied. "Make sure to finish the entire course, even if you start feeling better before then." "Okay, thank you," Emma said, feeling more confident with the instructions. As she reached for her wallet, the pharmacist added, "Also, drink plenty of water and avoid alcohol while you're on these antibiotics. It helps them work better." Emma nodded as she handed over her payment. "Thank you very much." "You're welcome. I hope you feel better soon," the pharmacist said warmly. Emma tucked the bag into her purse and headed out into the damp afternoon. The rain had stopped entirely, and the clouds were beginning to part, revealing a hint of sunshine. Despite her lingering fatigue, Emma felt a renewed sense of accomplishment. She had managed to navigate the entire process speaking English, understanding instructions, and handling the situation on her own. Now it was time to head home, rest, and let the medications do their work. Back at her apartment, Emma changed into her coziest pajamas and curled up on the couch. She carefully unpacked the pharmacy bag, placing the medications on the coffee table along with a glass of water. The clear instructions on the prescription were a comforting reminder that she had done everything right so far. Taking her first antibiotic capsule, Emma leaned back with a sigh of relief. The exhaustion still lingered, but knowing she had a plan to recover made her feel lighter. As the afternoon light filtered through the curtains, Emma found herself reflecting on the day. It hadn't been easy waking up feeling sick, struggling with her nerves, and communicating in English. But despite the challenges, she had managed to explain her symptoms, follow the doctor's advice, and navigate the pharmacy. Her phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "How are you feeling today?" Emma smiled and typed back, "Not great, but I went to the doctor and got medicine. It's hard speaking English, but I did it." Her friend replied almost immediately, "That's amazing, Emma. You're improving so much. Proud of you." Emma set her phone down, feeling a surge of pride. The experience had been a reminder of how much she had learned and how far she'd come. To solidify what she had practiced, Emma opened her notebook and began writing down some of the key phrases from the day. "I have a headache. My throat hurts. Do you have a fever? Take 1 pill every 12 hours. She added notes about how each phrase had been used and replayed the conversations in her mind. Speaking English wasn't perfect yet, but it didn't have to be. What mattered was her willingness to try. As the evening settled in, Emma brewed herself a cup of tea and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the city quiet and calm. Looking out the window, she thought about the next time she might need to use English in a real-world situation. It didn't seem as intimidating anymore. Emma picked up her phone and opened a language app. One more lesson before bed, she said with a small smile, feeling more confident than she had in months. With each word she practiced, she reminded herself, every step, no matter how small, was progress.